All right, welcome to Introduction to Ethics, and I am Dr. Carter. I'm glad to be your professor for the next 3 weeks as we talk about ethics and morality and those kinds of things. And so I thought that to start today, I would talk a little bit about the course, and then we will move into the topic of a little logic. Each day I will be uh, placing on the course website a video lecture of approximately 30 to 45 minutes that will address a particular topic that day. This week, we're focusing upon the issue of logic because logic is a part of ethical argumentation and those kinds of things. So this week, we will focus on what I'm calling a little logic, and then we will move into other aspects of ethics next week. So once again, each day I will post a video lecture of approximately 30 to 45 minutes that kind of summarizes the topic for that day. Again, I have also posted the syllabus on the course modules page. So make sure that you go to look at the syllabus. You're not concerned with most of the information in the syllabus. You're concerned primarily with things like the the tasks of the class, which are forums, quizzes, midterm, and final examination, and the credit or the weight given to those things. The predominant weight, as we will see in one moment, is with regard to the midterm and the final exam. So look at that. And then you'll also want to look at the course schedule, the topics. That's subject to change, but I try to stay with those topics and that schedule pretty closely so that you know the lay of the land ahead. With regard to resources that you will need, there's no textbook for the class. All you will need is to look at the PowerPoints that I post on the course website. Each of the lectures that I present to you on a daily basis will be reflected in the PowerPoints. So I strongly encourage you to print out the PowerPoints and look at those things and have those things available to you as you listen to the course lecture as well. And you can use those as study materials for the midterm and for the final, and also to help you with your quizzes and your forum discussion questions. Now, let me see, what else should I say? Once again, I'm honored to have you in this class. It's a fun class, it's an enjoyable class, and it's a practical class. So the challenge of this semester will be, this mini semester will be that it's moving so fast. We only essentially have 3 weeks. So don't get behind, stay on course every day, look at the lecture. Don't let those things pile up until the weekend. Look at the lecture. You can look at those at any time through the day that's convenient with your schedule. And just don't get behind, because once you get behind, you're in that's really challenging. That puts you at a great disadvantage. And because of the pace of the semester, I really can't be accommodating if you get behind. That's on your shoulders, not mine. But anyhow, so that having been said, let me move to the PowerPoint slides. And share my screen. And then here's the PowerPoint. And then we will look at this. And I hope everyone can see that. I'm going to view that as slideshow. So that kind of gives us the lay of the land. So this is our first lecture that we will look at. So once again, this is the course Ethics, Introduction to Ethics. And I am Dr. Carter. I started again with Prairie View this past fall, and I taught here a number of years ago, and they asked me to come back and teach some more. I'm glad to be back at Prairie View. But anyhow, that having been said, here's the course overview. Here's what we will look at over the next few weeks. First of all, we will study a history of ethics. As I said, this week we're going to focus on a little logic, and then the next week we will be looking at a history of ethics, and we'll look at various ethical movements and consider how those movements are still reflected in the ethical perspectives and worldviews of individuals today. So we'll talk about ethical history, and we'll talk about Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. And then we'll move to ethical theory and the various theories proposed with regard to how to make ethical decisions. And so we'll look at deontological ethics, we'll look at teleological ethics, the ethics of duty, the ethics of consequence, and we'll consider those things. Then after that, we'll look at what I am terming anti-ethics, and those are some theories and reactions to standard ethical approaches. The anti-ethics folks reject ethics, the typical ethical approaches, and propose alternative perspectives of ethics. And we'll talk about relativism there. We will talk about Nietzsche there. We will talk about feminist ethics. We will talk about environmental ethics and the ethics of environmental justice there. Then finally, we will talk about applied ethics, and applied ethics is exactly what it means. We will look at ethical issues. We'll look at the ethics of capital punishment. We will consider the ethics of physician-assisted suicide and euthanasia. We'll look at the ethics of war. And so we will just try to see how to apply the various theories that we've talked about to the various ethical issues, some of the various ethical issues of our day. The grade determination for the course will be as follows. It's pretty standard. 90 to 100 is an A. If your final average is in the 90 to 100 range is an A. 80 to 89 is a B. 70 to 79 is a C. 60 to 69 is a D. Below 60 is an F. Now, let me say, if you make an 89, for example, your final average is an 89. I typically will round that up to 90, which will put you in the A range. Or if you make a 79, I typically will round that up to 1 point and make it a B. Or if you make a 69, I typically will round that up and make it a C. If you make a 69, I typically will round that, or 59, I typically will round that up and make it a D to a 60. So that's typically, however, if you have a 40, then don't look for me to round things up. If you have a 30 or 20, or if you even have a 50 or 55, don't look for me to round that up, or an 85. That's not going to be. I will round up 1 point, so you'll stay in that bracket based upon where your numbers are. However, if you're borderline and that 1 point moves you into the next range, then that's perfectly fine. That's the way we work in this class. Next, makeup examinations. As I said, we're going to have 2 examinations in this course. We're going to have a midterm and a final. The format of those exams will be multiple choice. There will be up to 50 questions on the exam, 50 multiple choice questions. And so you'll have, I think it is 90 minutes to answer those. That's ample time to answer those. It'll be an online exam and it'll be timed. So don't wait too late to log into the exam based upon the schedule that I'll present to you, the date that it's given and the timeframes that it's open. So once you do that, you'll have 90 minutes to take the exam. But if you miss the exam, that's probably the big question in your mind. What if something happens and you miss the exam? So let's look very closely at the makeup policy. The makeup policy, in order for you to take a makeup exam, then that requires a valid excuse. A valid excuse means that there has to be, you were hospitalized and there has to be documentation to that effect, or you had a close family member who died, and that close family member would include a mother, father, brother, sister. It can't be your Aunt Zita who lives in Maine that you haven't seen in 20 years. That you haven't seen in 20 years. It can't be that person. No, it has to be someone within a close family member, brother, sister, mother, father, etc. Or yourself. You're severely sick, you're in the hospital, etc. Then next, all makeup examinations will be essay in format. I probably will not make them essay. It'll probably be another multiple choice exam. I'm going to reserve the right to make it essay, but it's probably going to be a multiple choice exam, different from the original one, but it will be a multiple choice exam. Then you must schedule that with me within 1 week after the regularly scheduled examination. It is your responsibility to do that. I won't contact you and say, hey, you missed the exam. I have too many students. I think there are 30 in this class. I have too many students to do that. So you have to initiate that process. You contact me, say, Dr. Carter, I missed the exam because I was in the hospital, etc. And then I'll ask you to provide a documentation to that effect. And then we will give you the makeup exam accordingly. So once again, it's the student's responsibility. It's your responsibility to initiate that process. Now then, that's how to take the makeup exam and how to get that lined up. Secondly, what about extra credit? I don't give extra credit. There's no reason for me to give extra credit. You have all that you need to do in this class in order to make the grade. And I will give you ample resources. I will give you ample guidance. I will give you ample direction in order for you to excel on the assignments that are presented. I also don't give extra credit in this class during the mini-semester because the pace is just too busy. It's just too fast. And so that just means more work for me and throws me behind, etc. So I just typically do not give extra. Well, I do not give extra credit. I will not do that. So I put on this PowerPoint slide, don't ask for extra credit. Don't even think about asking for extra credit from me in order to boost your grade, because that's just not going to happen. It's not that I'm stubborn or that I'm mean or anything to that effect. It's just that I give you every opportunity to shine in this class and to do well, and you will have an abundance of resources, and I am accessible to you via email and via Zoom office hours. So there's no reason whatsoever for you to need extra credit. So that's pretty well that. Now then, class attendance. This is an asynchronous course. That's the buzzword in education these days. So what does asynchronous means? That means that we will not have a set time every day that we meet together as a class via Zoom and go over the lecture. You're on your own to watch the lecture at a time during the day that is convenient for you, and to do the work and to look at the PowerPoints and to do the forums and to do the quizzes on your own schedule. So you're on your own. But again, don't get behind in this class, because once you get behind, it's a real problem for you. It's not really a problem for me. It's really a problem for you. So make sure that you stay on task. I suggest that every day you sit down, watch the lecture, and take notes and print out the PowerPoints and put those in a notebook or a binder of some kind, have them available to you to study, et cetera, et cetera. So the student is expected to check all course emails daily. You need to check your emails daily. I send emails all the time, and failing to read an email is no excuse. So check all of your emails, complete all of your assignments on time. No assignments will be reopened for any reason. That's always my policy. I do make exceptions if there's a major emergency like hospitalization or death of a family member that can be documented. But otherwise, no assignments will be reopened at all. You miss it, you miss it. Plus, with regard to that, let me say this. You are assigned forum discussions and quizzes. The forum discussions are simply short answer questions that you will answer based upon the PowerPoint notes. The quizzes are 10 questions, which are true false questions. Those are due simply by the last day of class in January. My advice to you, my strong advice to you, is that you do those on a weekly basis or uh, however they are assigned. But some of you probably will wait till the last minute and you'll just throw those things together, and you'll procrastinate and put off. But get those things done. And if you have any questions about that, I'm glad to answer your questions, but don't wait until the last week of class, because it's just too busy for you, and that's going to adversely impact your grade, and you're going to live with that. I'm not going to live with that, but you're going to live with that. So don't wait till the last minute to do those quizzes and those forum discussions. They're not that complicated. They're not that hard. They're all based on the notes and the lecture, the course PowerPoint slides and the lectures that are provided. So get those things done. The student is expected to complete examinations in the time period indicated and provided. I will send an email that says that the exam opens on such and such date at such and such time, that the exam closes on such and such date at such and such time, and that you are to take it within that window of time. And if you fail to take it within that window of time, then that's a problem. You will have ample time to take the exam, and the exam will be 90 minutes. You will be allowed 90 minutes to take it. It will not take you 90 minutes, or it should not take you 90 minutes to do the exam. Also, if you log into the exam, you cannot log out and come back to it later. Once you log in, you're locked in. And if you check out of the exam, then it's done. All right. So, and I will not reopen it for you. All right. So that's that. Now the next, students' weekly task: watch each online lecture, have the notes in front of you, complete the assigned readings. Those readings are going to be nothing more than the PowerPoint notes. Look over those things. I may assign an article every now and then that I will email to you. That's why you need to check your emails daily. Next, excuse me, complete each forum discussion. Complete each forum discussion by Sunday at 11:59. That's not true. You need to complete all of the forum discussion questions, and I think there are 4 of those. You need to complete those by the last regular day of class, and that's indicated in this. Will be indicated in the syllabus. So, and same thing with regard to the quizzes. If you take the quizzes on a weekly basis for personal discipline, but with regard to the quizzes, also you can wait until the very end of the semester, the last day of class, but that's going to be a problem. You don't want to take all of those quizzes in one sitting on one day. So something might happen at the last minute and you miss them all, and that really is going to impact your grade. All right, so we pretty well summarized what we talked about. 2 major exams. Each exam will be worth 45% of your grade. Midterms 45%. Final exam is 45%. And they will be online, consisting of up to 50 multiple choice questions each. All right, so that's pretty well that. Now then, let me see. We've already talked about the structure. Now then, we're going to talk about a little logic with regard to ethics. Logic is part and parcel of ethics. And so in order to present an ethical argument, logic should be a part of your argumentation style. For example, if you're going to address the ethical aspects of capital punishment, whether capital punishment is right or wrong, you're going to want to argue whether present the arguments addressing arguments for capital punishment, and then you'll want to present those arguments. Then you'll want to present the arguments against capital punishment. And then after you've addressed arguments for capital punishment and arguments against capital punishment, then I always tell the student to pick a lane and drive in it. And by that, I mean this. You simply just have to make a choice as to which arguments you think are the best. And that forces you, that compels you to think about, for example, capital punishment from both perspectives. Why is capital punishment right? Why is capital punishment wrong? And then which is the strongest argument, or which is my position? So that will kind of be our approach in here. So logic is part and parcel of your argumentation. So it's important important that you have the basics of logic down. Just some of the basics. We're not going to go in depth with regard to logic. Logic can be very frustrating and very aggravating, but we're going to hit the high points with regard to logic. Let's talk about a little logic as related to Aristotle. Aristotle was one of the probably the greatest ethicists and the greatest moral philosophers ever to have lived. He proposed what was called the Aristotelian syllogism. That's a fancy word for just simply a form of argumentation. The Aristotelian syllogism is what it's called. By Aristotelian syllogism, we simply mean that which provides a pattern by which we can test the validity of an argument. In logic, the question is, the issue at hand is the validity, and that's important that you get down up front. The question with regard to logic and Aristotelian syllogisms is this: is the argument a valid argument? Not are the premises true, not is the argument true, but is this a valid argument? Now, you're going to understand what that means in a moment when we look at some examples of Aristotelian syllogisms. But the primary question with regard to syllogisms is, does the argument have coherent validity? Does it hold together? Does it cling together? This is different from asking if the statement is true. And so if you see a multiple choice question or an exam question that says syllogisms test whether or not an argument is true, that's false. No, syllogisms do not test whether an argument is true. It tests whether an argument is valid. When we look at a syllogism, as we'll see in a moment, we're asking, does it cohere? Does it hang together? And so as a result of that, is it a valid argument? Can you reach the conclusion based upon the premises of the argument? The premises may be completely untrue. They may, in real life, they may be untrue. It may, all hippopotamuses or all hippopotami fly. Well, they don't fly, but we're not concerned with that. We're concerned with the validity of the argument. Now, that's going to play itself out in a moment, and you'll see an example of that, and you'll probably see that example on the exam coming up in midterm. So the truth of an argument and the validity of the argument are different issues. Syllogisms are concerned with validity. All right, so the structure of an Aristotelian syllogism or a syllogism is as follows. First of all, you'll have premise one. Premise one will make a statement. Premise two will make another statement, and that relates to premise one. And then the conclusion typically begins with the word therefore, and the conclusion is to be based upon the first two premises, premise one and premise two. If premise one is true, if premise two is true, therefore, what conclusion can we, or is valid? What conclusion can we reach with regard to those two premises? So let's see an example of that. So the example I have put before you is a standard example. Now look closely at this example. Premise one is all men are mortal. All right, so all men are mortal. That's premise one. Premise two, Socrates is a man. So that's premise two. Conclusion, therefore, Socrates is mortal. Can the conclusion be validly derived from the two premises above? Well, if all men are mortal, all men, no exceptions, all men are mortal. And if Socrates is a man, then the question is, can we arrive at the conclusion that Socrates is therefore mortal? Well, yes, we can. That is a valid argument. That is a valid argument. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Because Socrates is a man, and because all men are mortal, therefore Socrates must be mortal. All right. So that is a valid argument. Do you see how it coheres? Do you see how it hangs together? Premise one, generally, all men are mortal. Premise two, Socrates is a man. Therefore, because Socrates is a man and because all men are mortal, Socrates must of necessity be mortal as well. If that said all men are mortal, Socrates is a Martian, therefore Socrates is mortal, that would not be a valid argument because it doesn't hang together. All men are mortal, yes. Socrates is a Martian. Well, we don't know if he's a man or not. All we know is he's a Martian. So premise two presents a problem for us with regard to reaching a conclusion that Socrates is mortal. So that would radically alter the conclusion. The conclusion would not be valid. That would not be a valid argument. So the question behind syllogisms is one of validity, not necessarily whether it is actually true in real life or not. All right, so that's that. Now then, as we've seen, an argument is valid if the conclusion is necessarily true, whenever the premises are true. So going back to this, so the premises, all men are mortal. All right, let's accept that as truth. We know it's true in real life, but even if it wasn't true in real life, then we still simply stay within the parameters of that particular premise. It says all men are mortal. You just accept that. Socrates is a man. You just accept that. Stay within the argument itself. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. So. As we've seen, an argument is valid if the conclusion is necessarily true whenever the premises are true. I wish I would have changed that word true to the word necessarily valid. But just simply remember that we're concerned with validity here, not necessarily truth. It will help to analyze the form of various arguments and invalid arguments. Consider this argument. So let's look at this argument on the page in front of you there. Dolphins are mammals, so they must have hair. All right. So we ask ourselves, is that a valid argument? Because dolphins are mammals, can we therefore conclude that they have hair? So I put that into an order or a form for you based upon the form or structure of the Socratic argument, the Socrates argument. Premise one, we only have one premise here. Premise one, dolphins are mammals, all right? It doesn't tell us anything about mammals. It just says dolphins are mammals. The conclusion, dolphins must have hair. Can you arrive at the conclusion based exclusively on premise one? Does premise one tell us anything about dolphins being mammals and that mammals must have hair? No. All it says is dolphins are mammals. It doesn't say a flippant thing about mammals having hair. That is an invalid argument. Something's missing in that argument. It really contains kind of a logical leap. We're leaping into the conclusion that because dolphins are mammals, then dolphins must have hair. It's a logical leap. We've left something out. We've jumped from a premise to the conclusion. This is dolphins are mammals, so they must have hair. This is pretty informal. So first, we have to organize it. So your premise, as I said, all dolphins are mammals. Therefore, all dolphins are things that have hair. Conclusion. Is this a valid argument? No, it's not a valid argument. Why? This is an invalid argument because the form of the argument is invalid. Something is missing in that argument. I hope you see that, frail creature of dust that you are out there in Prairie View Zoom land. Something is missing in that argument. It contains a logical leap regarding mammals having hair. It doesn't tell us that all mammals must have hair or that all mammals have hair. Something is omitted, something is overlooked, something is neglected, something is left out. All right, so this is an invalid argument. So this argument is not valid. Why? Because the form is invalid. Does the conclusion follow logically from the premise? The conclusion does not follow logically from the premise. What must we do to make this argument valid? We must address the relationship between being a mammal and having hair. All right. So that's what's missing in the argument. You can't just look at the argument and see that, because dolphins are mammals, then therefore dolphins have hair. There's something missing. There has to be an intermediate step there. All right. So does this fix our problem? All dolphins are mammals. All mammals are things that have hair. Therefore, all dolphins are things that have hair. Yes, that fixes it. Uh, Originally we had nothing but a logical leap from premise one to the conclusion. Now we have premise one, mammals. Premise two, mammals. All mammals have hair, and then three. Therefore, dolphins, since they are mammals, must have hair. So that fixes the argument. Now, uh, uh, let's just look at the form of the argument above, because that's the goal. Here's the primary way that you can assess whether or not an argument is valid. All A's are B's, all B's are C's, therefore all A's are C's. All right, so all A's, all dolphins are B's, all dolphins are mammals. So dolphin is A, mammals are B's. All mammals, B's, are C's, things that have hair. Therefore, all dolphins, A's, are things that have hair, C's. So that's a valid form for the argument. So on the exam, if you break it down into that kind of symbolic representation, you'll be fine. All A's are B's, all B's are C's. Therefore, all A's are C's. All right. So uh, and then in the third section on that slide, I combined it for you. All A's are B's is to say all dolphins are mammals. All B's are C's. All mammals are things that have hair. Therefore, all A's are C's. Therefore, all dolphins, A's, are things that have hair, C's. So that's the proper form of a valid argument. Okay. Now we're going to move on to see how that can be altered to form an invalid argument. The form of the argument is valid. We now can substitute anything for the variables A, B, and C. It will always be a valid argument. You can substitute anything for those A, B, C's. It will be a valid argument. That's the form of a valid argument. If the argument on the exam follows that structure, then it's going to be a valid argument. If it reverses that structure in any fashion, it's going to be an invalid argument. So I strongly recommend that you break it down in that sense. All right, so now then let's consider the following. Another example. Let me check my time. Let's consider the following. If A equals oceans, and B equals things, and C equals things with chlorine in them, all right? Premise one, all oceans are things that are full of salt. All right. Premise two, all things that are full of salt are things that are full of chlorine. All right. The conclusion, therefore, all the oceans are things that are full of chlorine. Is the argument above a sound argument? If so, why so? If not, why not? That kind of reflects what you might see on the exam. And I'll give you 4 options and you'll pick one of those options. All right. So is that a valid argument? Yes. The above argument is sound because its premises are valid, but the valid argument does not need to have true premises. All right. So so that argument above is a valid argument. It's a legit argument. It's a valid argument. It follows the structure. All A's are B's, all B's are C's, all A's are C's. All right, so it follows that structure. If you just break that down into A, B, C, it follows that structure. So therefore, it's a valid argument. However, let me see. I want to move to this slide here to illustrate the next point. The premises of the above argument were true, but does a valid argument require true premises? Now, this is where it gets very tricky for you. Listen to me closely. This is where it gets very tricky for you because you're going to read a premise and you're going to say, well, that's not true. And you're going to think the argument is invalid. No, Remember, uh, arguments are not concerned with the truth of the premises. Arguments are concerned with the validity of the conclusion and the premises, all related together. I've given you an example here that will simplify that. Premise one: all hippos are things that can fly. That's premise one. Is that true? No, that's not true. Hippopotami cannot fly. All right, so it's not true, but that's not what we're concerned with. We're concerned with the coherence of the argument. All right, so don't just think, well, Dr. Carter on the exam, hippopotami cannot fly, so therefore this is invalid. No, that's not the issue. The premise that I give you may be completely untrue, but that's not what we're concerned with. We're concerned with whether or not the argument is valid. So all hippos are things that can fly. That's not true, a true premise, but we're not concerned with that. Premise two: all things that can fly are things that have been to the moon. Is that true? No, that's not true. Airplanes haven't been to the moon. Birds haven't been to the moon, as far as we know. Uh, uh, so no. Again, that premise is not true. But that's not what we're concerned with. We're concerned with whether or not the argument is valid. Therefore, all hippos are things that have been to the moon. All right. So, uh, is that a valid argument? Well, the premises are not true, but the argument is valid. The argument is a valid argument. If you accept that all hippos are things that can fly, and if you accept that all things that can fly are things that have been to the moon, therefore, of necessity, hippos must be things that have been to the moon. That is a valid argument. If you accept premise one, if you accept premise two, then the conclusion derives directly from those premises. That is a valid argument. So don't buy into the idea that because the premises are not true here with regard to whether or not hippos can fly. They can't fly, but that's not what we're concerned with. We're concerned with the totality of the argument. Can the conclusion be legitimately derived from the premises previously stated? All right, so it follows that form. All A's are B's, all B's are C's, therefore all A's are C's. If you map that out, it follows that form, and then you will conclude this is a valid argument. Premises are just completely false. Hippopotami cannot fly, and all things that fly have not been to the moon, but that's beside the point. The issue is the validity of the argument, all right? So let me say a little, once again, the premises to the hippo argument above are not true. The validity of the argument has nothing to do with the truth of the premises. Validity only has to do with the form of the argument. So that kind of gets us started on the issue of logic. And so if you need to watch this video, watch it again. And this will be on the exam. And if you have any questions, shoot me an email or show up at my office hours, online Zoom office hours that are indicated on the syllabus. I think those are on Tuesday and Thursday from 5 until 6. I think that's right. And all you have to do is log into the Zoom link that's on the course modules page, and then I will admit you into the office, my Zoom office hours, and we'll talk, and I'll try to answer any questions that you have. It is a thrill to have you in my class. We're going to have fun in here, and let me know how things are going for you, and do well. There's no reason why you shouldn't do well in this course. If you don't, it's your own fault. I'm honored to be your prof, and I'm looking forward to the journey. I'll see you tomorrow. Otherwise, send me emails. Bye-bye.